Are we live? Are you recording?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 126 of the Laravel News Podcast. I'm Jacob Bennett, and this is Michael Dorinda.
Hello. I do not have
Hello.
whatever it is that accent is that you are attempting to do.
I don't know what that is. I was doing the little southern accent. What did I say before?
Dueling
Let's
banjos.
get this show.
It's just,
Yeah. I said we should do it live on air. You disagreed. It's okay.
Well, yeah. Trying to keep this thing
It's okay.
fresh. I just want to start with Go Lakers. They have advanced to the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 2008. So
it's a bit different watching it now, right?
It is.
I mean, it looks more like an arena basketball. It's just very odd.
It's odd not having the fans there, but if you're not watching and you don't know that there aren't physically fans there, like if you can't see that, then it kind of looks pretty cool. It sounds and feels like a real game. Every now and then you can hear the audio sort of blank out when someone in the broadcast room is like hitting mute because someone on the court is swearing. So you got to have that 8-second delay, that broadcast delay.
Yep.
But excited that they've made it, and also happy with the work that the players that the league is doing at the moment. To try and change the conversation in the US at the moment. There's a lot of disappointing things happening over there. Unsurprising given the history of the country, but it's good to see that they're at least trying to shift the conversation and do something about it. And it starts with these people in prominence, using their positions. And I don't believe in staying in your own lane. I believe in using your position and your influence to, do what's right and as much as possible. So, and if you have opinions to the contrary on that, I don't really want to hear from you, because you are categorically incorrect. Something has to change, and it's not just over there; it's over here as well. Something has to change, and it starts with, people that have a position of influence doing that. It's the same thing in our community. It's the Matt Stauffers and the Taylors and things like that, trying to bring in new faces and Susanna doing Laravel's and all that kind of stuff. It's all about giving everyone an equal opportunity to have a voice and to have a say. So, well, we got there from basketball. So I think we'll probably move on to Laravel news.
The releases, my friend, the releases. And I'm actually going to let you start these because I haven't looked at these yet, because these aren't linked up from the show notes or from our blog post. And maybe you could give a little quick shout out to our main man who usually does that for us, everyone's favorite human.
Shout out to everyone's favorite human, Paul Redmond, who last episode we said we hadn't heard much from him and he hadn't been writing some, any content for a little while. And we put it down to him taking some time off. He's taking some time off. He got into a fight with a pool cleaner, and not like another human being pool cleaner.
That's what I thought when you first said that. I was like, what?
Everyone's favorite human would not get into a fisticuffs with another human being. No, it was a machine pool cleaner. He cut his hand open and had to get himself some stitches. So he's not
like
being
13.
Yeah. So
not like a stitch or two, like 13 stitches
13
like
in his hand. So it's a sizable scratch he's got there. So we wish Paul all the best to a speedy recovery. And on that note, Laravel 7.26 was released on the 25th of August and added a bunch of new features. First up, we have the new when has and when filled methods, which were added to the interacts with input trait. And that is exposed via the request object. So if you are injecting the request or you're using the request helper or the request facade, however you go about that, you now have the ability to call when has and when filled. Previously, you would have to do, an if statement, if request has filled, and then do something inside that. Whereas now you can use the when has and when filled methods. And I better double check, but I assume it allows you to pass a closure as the second argument and do some kind of stuff with it. So it allows you to fluently chain things onto your request. So request when city, do something when minimum price, do something when et cetera, and just change it all together just to, really clean things up. And of course, if you're using PHP 7.4, you've got the ability to use the short closure functions as well. So thanks. Oh, that was Taylor, who, I don't know, Pascal Baljet pulled that one together. So thanks very much for that. That is certainly helpful. We've also added some email validation with custom classes, a new a new component attribute bag where it doesn't start with for your Blade view components, as well as a synchronous commit for Postgres support, nested errors supported now in assert JSON validation errors, and the support to read streams using the file system manager, along with some bug fixes and some small changes. And on the back of that, there was also Laravel 7.26.1, which fixed a offset error in the invalid remember token, and supported or fixed a bug with PHP Redis host prepending and things like that. So we'll have links to both of those in the show notes. But yeah, I'm excited for that, the request when filled, because I know in some stuff that I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing those conditionals on. This is the thing. I always see these things, and it's that tolerance to pain threshold that people talk about. Taylor has a very low one. Someone I was listening to, I think it must have been Jonathan. I think it was Jonathan Rennick on the Laravel podcast. He was talking about having a little bit higher. I think it was him. I'm sorry if I'm misremembering that. I have a little bit higher tolerance to that kind of pain, where I didn't even think to create a pull request to add a when filled. I just went, well, yeah, we just do a if when, kind of thing. So I appreciate the people that do that. And one of these days I will do that. That said, having a low tolerance to pain, I came across an issue the other day in the JSON resources. If you do a when loaded to determine, some key should be displayed in your Eloquent resource when a relationship is loaded, we found out that doesn't actually work for nested relationships. So if you have like a user that has posts that has comments, and you want to say on that user resource, show me the comments, and then you do, this when loaded post.comments, that won't actually work. And I went digging through the framework source code and saw in there that it just doesn't array key exist. And I thought, this is easy. We'll just put a array has and use dot notation and everything will be fine, but not to be. And I very quickly realized that there was a reason that wasn't supported. I'm sure maybe someone will hear this and decide to go investigating. I had to get back to doing what I was doing, so I ended up with a couple of if statements in there. But it seems when I
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with some if statements there.
It seems to be that when I do think to go and fix someone else's pain, that I find things that are much more difficult to solve than some of these other things. So I did message Taylor and I said, why does this not work? And then I started working on it, and about 15 minutes later I messaged him and I said, oh I see.
Isn't that funny? So, it's always like, oh, this must be a bug, and then you're like, wait, no, yeah, that's not a bug.
Reason this doesn't exist.
A bug. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, that is releases. Please tell us about the excitement of before we talk about the things coming in Laravel version 8. Let's talk about Laracon Online itself. Just to jump ahead.
Yeah, do we have that on the list here or no?
There is Laracon Online videos. We can talk about
Laracon Online videos. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the Laracon Online videos are out. They were actually out the day after, which is pretty awesome. It's a pretty quick turnaround. If you didn't get a ticket, there's still time. It's a $29 ticket for access to all the videos. So you got Frank Vanderhurt and Jenny Shen, which was actually a really interesting one, talking for designing for users across different cultures. That was a very interesting talk. Jonathan Rennick, Jeffrey Way, which was great. Taylor Otwell, of course. Prosper talked about machine learning. That was an awesome one. That was really cool. Colin DiCarlo did a lot of stuff with refactoring. If you like PHP Storm, he used code coverage tests to figure out which paths were being used and not used, and refactored some code really, really quickly and really well. It was like a code kata that he went through and redid. It was a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
Style for don't cry when your dev dependencies die. Introducing Titan's new takeout, which basically replaces your local instance of MySQL or Postgres or whatever it might be with a Docker version of that. So if you need to install something that wouldn't otherwise be able to be installed on your Mac machine, something like maybe SQL Server, something like that, you can install it in Docker because you don't have to install it on a Mac. You just install it in Docker. So previously, maybe that's been a bit of a pain, but with this takeout, they make it really simple. It's just a little CLI app that allows you to do these things really fast, really simple, just like Titan always does. Marcel, another refactoring talk. There was a couple of these, so not another as in it was less good. It was just another one of those. Adam Wathan talked about building component libraries with Tailwind CSS. So he sort of had like 4 different levels. Have you ever seen that meme where it's like, it's a brain, like a view of a brain, and it's like the first one's just kind of like a little bit, and then the second one's like a little bit more activity. The third one's like they're enlightened, and the fourth one is like mind-blowing, whatever. He kind of did that. He went through like 4 different levels of ways that you could create components with Tailwind CSS, but it was a great listen. It's always cool to get a inside look into Adam's brain, and he had some really good points in there, as well as like, I always feel good. Like there are sometimes things that I'm like, should I be doing this? Should I not? And there were a couple of things in that talk that he like sort of gave permission to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, by the way, you don't have to have the same HTML for desktop and mobile. It's okay to have different versions of HTML and showing how them. It's like, oh, I just needed somebody to say that, right?
That always
somebody
felt
who's
like
doing
a weird thing to do. I went, surely it's easy just to do this, and then you always feel bad. It's like, no, you should be able to make
right.
it.
I
And
know.
sometimes
Sometimes
it just
you can,
doesn't
right?
work. Yeah.
Yeah. Correct. Jess Archer, Laravel Developer's Guide to View Spas, which, by the way, is not only is not only for people who are building spas. There was some really good tips in there that she gave about just basically developing for the front end in the Laravel application. So that was great. April Dunford talked about how to position your app in the marketplace, which was cool. Caleb Porzio talked about Livewire and Alpine, and I about lost my mind.
That is next on my list. I watched Taylor's talk because this was in the middle of the night for me. So I watched Taylor's talk.
Sure.
The other day I watched the Takeout talk because that was actually of interest to me because I need to do some stuff with Elasticsearch, and installing that on my Mac doesn't seem like fun. So Takeout seems perfect. And next on my list will be Caleb's talk because we are using Livewire and Alpine, and I think there's some things that I do with the combination of Livewire, Alpine, and Blade View components that are not quite right, and I end up getting stuck and going round and round in circles. So maybe I'll learn some things. But that is a
couple things I learned. Yeah, you can send routes straight to Livewire components, which I did not know.
Yes, you can.
I did not know that. That you can just say, go to your web.php and then route and then straight to a Livewire component.
Livewire.
What?
I think that the syntax changes in version 2, but it's route : Livewire, and you don't even need no controller, nothing.
Yeah, I was like, that's insane. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, very cool. So there was some stuff too, like file downloads that you can do now. So you just stream a response down. You just click a button and call an execution or call a method in your component. And if you just return a stream download, it just downloads it. No worries.
Magic.
They have file uploads as well. So that's really insanely awesome. Very cool. You can bind models as a public property now. So like when you were passing in before, you couldn't do that. So you'd have to have like all of these properties listed out. So like if you had a model that you wanted to update like 10 properties on, you'd have to list all those out as public properties. You don't have to do that anymore.
Lovely.
Which is huge. There's now a rules property, which you can use with this validate, which will just validate a payload. Very cool. So it basically, some magic stuff like a controller would have. You can now, oh my gosh, I don't want to spoil it for you, dude, but it is so awesome. You can access Livewire components from the front end now. So you can say like var component equals Livewire first, and then you can get the variables from the Livewire component in JavaScript on the front end.
Interesting.
So with that, you can actually do something called Livewire and Livewire and Alpine like merge like this, and it's called entangle. So you can entangle a variable on the front end with Alpine, on the back end with Livewire. Oh my word! I literally
Caleb Kid is on another level. He's something
else. level. So
And you
basically,
know he's something else when you see Taylor tweeting that the stuff that Caleb is talking about is mind blowing. Like you think of some
well,
of the
so
stuff
here's the
that
crazy
Taylor's
thing.
done over the years.
I know, right? So here's the crazy thing is that Jetstream, which we'll talk about in a minute, is all Livewire entangle. It's all everything. It's Alpine and Livewire entangled
Mm-hmm.
to do all of the Jetstream stuff, and it's so good,
I need to see this in
so good.
action. I need to see it. I
Yes.
need it.
So if you didn't watch that talk, folks, yet, it's worth the $29 ticket for that talk. It's so good. So check that out. I'm so excited. All right. Tim McDonald, Follow the Eloquent Road.
Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy.
Oi, oi, oi. And then Jack Ellis, How to Skilled Fathom Analytics to Handle Billions of Requests. He's got a great blog post on this as well, which has been read apparently a bunch of times too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also digital swag. There was a chance to get an iPhone 11 or a Google Pixel 4, lots of discounts and credits towards courses and services, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a great conference. We had a little meetup here in Bloomington. Had like seven folks here. So that was really fun. Had
Mm-hmm.
a great time. So yeah, that was Laracon Online, and one of the things with Laracon Online, since you just watched the talk, why don't you talk about Laravel 8? What's coming in Laravel 8?
Indeed. So as we spoke about last episode, Laravel 8 is planned to be released on the 8th of September. And in anticipation, Taylor has been hinting at some of the features that will be coming to the framework and demoed pretty much all of these features in his talk at Laracon. But some of the things that we want to talk about specifically that Eric wrote about on the blog is a PHP Artisan serve enhancement, which is just a small quality of life improvement in Laravel 8 that you no longer need to restart PHP Artisan serve if you update your env file. It will automatically detect the changes have been made there and restart for you.
That's really nice.
So if you are just living that Artisan serve life for your local development, changes will be read in and you can just keep on working. The other thing here is that the Laravel 8 skeleton will include an app models directory by default. This came to life after a Twitter poll a few months back where pretty much it was Taylor said in his Laracon Online talk that it was the most liked tweet that he's put out in a long time.
That's
and
funny.
that 80% of the respondents are crazy people that want to have an app models directory in their applications. So from Laravel 8, the skeleton, so if you were to create a new project, it will have a models directory in there. If you're upgrading from Laravel 7, you don't need to do it. You can add it in there or whatever else. And then all of the generator commands that work with models, whether it's make model or make migration -m or make controller, will respect that setting or that configuration. So if you have a models directory, it will automatically reference the model from the app models namespace. And if, like me, you do not have a models directory, then you can just keep doing what you're doing and Laravel will respect that as well. So I feel like that's the best of both worlds for the people that need to have needless levels of organization in their application and those that don't. And the other things that Taylor went through in his talk is the new factory classes. So, we had to define states and things like that in flat files and closures and callbacks and things like that. In Laravel 8, we'll now have class-based factory. So you can just create a user factory, which is a class. And then inside there, you can return your definition, which is your array of fields. You can have states in there. It's got some really nice improvements to the way that you handle your relationships and things like that. And you can call it directly off of your model. So if you add the, I don't remember the trait.
Like
You
a
add a
user
trait.
factory or
Correct.
whatever.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a trait that you add to your. I think you add it to the model, or it's there by default. And you just go, model : factory, and that's it. So you don't need to use the factory helper method anymore. It's all done. There's the ability to squash migrations. So if you have over time built up dozens or hundreds of migrations, you can do. You can run an Artisan command, which will compress that all down to a schema.sql file. And then the next time you run Artisan migrate or migrate fresh, and especially in your testing environments and things like that, it will run the schema first, and then anything that's not in that schema, it'll just continue to run through. So that's really handy. There's also some great improvements to job batching, bulk job batch processing, job backoffs, rate limiting, exception reporting, event listening has been improved greatly. So now you can event listen, and if you type hint the event that you're listening to, it will be able to infer the event itself, so you don't have to specify the event itself, which is really handy. That route caching improvements, improvements to maintenance mode, so you can now redirect users to specific pages. You can return different status codes. You can generate a secret key that if you were to reference that whilst the application is in maintenance mode, it will unlock the maintenance mode for you rather than having to deal with application whitelists and things like that. So if you needed to do some testing in production, if you've got a bug and you want to lock your users out, but you still need to be able to get to it, you can use this new functionality. And lastly, the new thing that Taylor announced was Jetstream, which is essentially Laravel is now decoupling some features and functionality out of Spark. So Laravel Spark being the software as a service boilerplate, essentially they're taking the user and team management component out of Spark and making it a free and open source package. And then Spark will be solely, it will continue to be a paid product is my understanding, and that will be the billing component. So interacting with Stripe, and in the new version of Spark that is coming out will also support Paddle, which means that you'll be able to support PayPal through that platform as well. Handle direct debit cards and things like that. So I'm very excited to get my hands on Jetstream. I was probably, I don't know, half to 2/3 of the way through building team support for our little side thing, Then Ping Me. And when you messaged me at like 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was while I was working on this, I was halfway through it, and then I went to bed and almost cried myself to sleep because it was getting tedious building that out myself. So I'm very much looking forward to getting our hands on that and simplifying a lot of stuff and getting a lot of extra functionality that perhaps we hadn't considered because, you know, we're building this ourselves from scratch. So fantastic to see that is being open source, true to his word. At the end of last year, started this year, Taylor said he's really going to dig deep. He's not going to push a commercial product this year. He's going to really work on open source and giving back to the community. And it's fantastic to see that, you know, Jetstream and Fortify, which we didn't really hear too much about so far. So once that's released, I'm sure we'll hear more details about that and how it ties everything together. So looking forward to all of that. Hopefully we see Jetstream soon. And Laravel 8, as I said, will be shipping on the 8th of September. So massive little segment there on Laravel 8. Very excited to see that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. There was so many.
The other thing that stood out to me is that Laravel has now, Laravel 8 will have its first ever namespaced helper function. So it's this queuable function.
Yes.
So you could pass an anonymous closure and shove that straight onto a queue. So that was pretty cool. Definitely check out the Laracon online talk because I've glazed over stuff even quicker than what Taylor did in his talk, obviously. So check it out. As we said before, you can still grab tickets at the time of this recording from laracon.net. They are $29, and you get access to all of the videos basically straight away, and the digital swag that is included.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm waiting, just holding my breath for this Laravel 8 to come out. It's going to be so great and so many cool things. So Prosper said that he's releasing a package when Laravel 8 comes out. So it's Laravel Machine Learning. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, Caleb is releasing Livewire 2.0. And then we've got Jetstream coming out. We've got all the new things with Laravel 8. This is like a huge release, just a huge release. So many big things in here. I'm really, really excited about the class-based factories. I think specifically for us, that's going to help a lot. They were getting really nasty. They are a freaking disaster. And then also this idea, so like Laravel Spark, I was actually just looking at it the other day. I was like, man, I wish that was a little bit better. It's like a hot mess. And it's not a hot mess. It's just I don't like the design of it, right? It's like Bootstrap. And Taylor addressed that. He's like, you should be able to use this without having to use Bootstrap. It's like old, right? So it's all with Tailwind now. It's all using the tall stack. So it's great. So you've got, you've got Jetstream, and then you got Spark. And you can think of Spark almost as like a premium cashier. You know what I mean? It's sort of like what we've talked about with Stripe's new billing offering, how you just kind of have this separate portal that you direct somebody to, and it handles all that. And I feel like that's kind of like what Spark's going to be. You just build your app, and it's just a package you kind of install, I think. And then it just kind of bolts onto your application instead of being like the entire application, right? It just kind of handles the billing portion of things. So yeah, it looks really good. Everything's looking awesome. So that team is killing it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All
Fantastic.
right,
And
so we've
I'm
got
excited
that.
because we haven't heard much about what Nuno's working on since he started working for the Laravel team as well. So I'm sure there's other secrets in the wings that we'll see over the
Is
coming
he on
weeks
that
and
team now?
months.
Did I miss that? Is he working for Laravel team now?
Yeah,
Or is he just doing
Nuno's
some side stuff
no
for
no
them?
Nuno started working for Laravel probably about a month ago now.
Didn't realize that.
Hmm.
Congrats, Nuno. Way to go, man. Awesome. Okay. So next on the list, we've got Statamic 3, which has now been released. So after a few months of being in beta, Statamic 3 is now officially launched and available to everyone. So this release marks a new beginning for Statamic because the system is now built as a Laravel package. So you can just drop it into your Laravel application and have a full CMS at your disposal. How nice is that? And this sort of seems like the way people are going a little bit. They realize that like at this point in the Laravel lifecycle, most people already have an application, right? There are people who are starting greenfield, but there's a lot of people who have existing applications. And it's really nice just to be able to drop some of these things onto your existing application and get all the amazing functionality that these tools offer. For example, Statamic 3. So that's just one of the major feature announcements in here. The other features from the release announcement. So it's built as a Laravel package. You can drop it in without having to jangle WordPress or another platform onto a subdomain, God forbid, subdirectory, and glue it into your app directory with bubblegum and rubber bands. Thank you for all that amazing type, Jack. He's just a genius with the words.
He is.
It's also, here's the crazy thing too, it's also open source and completely free for personal use.
Yeah, which is really cool. That's
Awesome.
That's a first for Statamic, I think.
It is, and I'm hoping that that gets them a ton of adoption and they become like the default CMS for all Laravel stuff. Like, it's so good. It really is so good. So it's open source, free for personal use. So if you haven't used it before, definitely use it. It's also designed to scale. So you can start with flat files, and then you can transition to a database or cloud storage service when you need to by using data repositories. So this data repository allows you to sort of switch out what you're using as your backend for Statamic, right? It can also be used as a headless CMS with their content API, so you can use it just for the administration of that stuff, and then access it through an API for easy integration into a front end stack that you would prefer. It can also transform into a static site generator with their SSG package. So they've got all these add-ons and all these packages that really allows this thing to be completely flexible to meet whatever your needs are. I mean, if you think about it, that's the entire stack, right? Open source, it's a package for a Laravel app. It can be used just as a headless CMS, or it can be a static site generator. I mean, that's all of it, right? I mean, that's pretty much everything. So, also, outside of these main features, Statamic 3 has a new pricing structure, which is Statamic 3 Pro is $259. It includes a year of updates and developer support. And then after that, each additional year of updates and basic support is only $59. So you don't ever have to renew your site to keep using it or leave it online. But if you want to get the latest updates after a year, you just have to pay $59. This is sort of like the model that Sketch I know uses.
Yeah.
So you pay once and then you get a year of updates, and then after that, if you want to purchase again, you just kind of pay like a lower fee, right? And then you just get the updates for that. Yeah,
it's fairly common now. You know,
so,
Sketch does it. Figma is free in the cloud, but you've got PHP Storm is the same kind of thing. Where you've got the perpetual license. You buy 12 months of updates, and then you can keep using that version forever. And if you want to get the next version, then you re-up your subscription. So I think it's a nice middle ground between lock-in and subscriptions and things like that, and paying for software forever kind of thing. So
yeah, absolutely. So quick caveat, just to be clear, the solo and free version is open source, but it does not include every feature that's in Pro. That's okay. It's more than capable to handle any personal or hobby site stuff, but they do have a side-by-side comparison of feature breakdown on their pricing page, so you can go check that out. If it's at all possible, please support these folks. They're really, really good people. They've got a great team. They've been around for quite a while, and they are valuable members of the Laravel community. So if you have not used Statamic before, check out Statamic 3. It's promising to be a great CMS, and hopefully you can use it not only for personal things, but also for some commercial products. Throw these guys some cash and keep them going. That'd be awesome.
Magic. The next thing we have, which we touched on briefly before, is Takeout from the folks at Titan. So at the Laracon Online talk that Matt Stauffer and Jose Soto gave, they launched Takeout, which is a Mac-based CLI tool for spinning up tiny Docker containers, one for each of your development environment dependencies. It's not a replacement for Valet or Homestead, it's to supplement it. And it allows you to essentially run isolated containers for Mueller search, MySQL, so you can run different versions of MySQL, MariaDB, all that kind of good stuff. And it allows you to essentially enable and disable Docker containers as you need it, and then just access them as though you had them installed via Brew locally. But you can shut them down when you're not using them, and it'll persist your data between runs, so you don't have to worry about losing all your data or your migrations and things like that. You could have separate MySQL container running for each project, and if you switch between projects, you could spin down, your Laravel News MySQL container and spin up your Jetstream container for MySQL and things like that. So that's all done via Docker's persistent volume storage. It does currently require macOS, Composer, and Docker, but they are looking to provide support for Linux and Windows. But it will support MySQL, Postgres, Microsoft SQL Server, Elasticsearch, Mueller Search, Redis, and Memcache from basically now. So you can check that out. We'll have links to that in the show notes. I'm definitely going to take that for a spin. I'm using DB Engine, DBNGIN at the
Yep.
moment, which is from the folks that build Table Plus. It is a little bit lighter in that, you don't have to have Docker running and that kind of stuff. But it doesn't have the breadth of service support. And of course, being an open source thing, if you needed something else, if you wanted to have a container that ran, for example, Minio, you could just, send a pull request to get Minio up and running, and then you could just spin that up using Takeout as well, I would imagine. So definitely check that out. Say thanks to the folks over at Titan for that. And if you are on Windows or Linux, then maybe you'd be interested in contributing in getting it working on those platforms as well. So as I said, links will be in the show notes. I'm excited to check it out. I might finally install Docker on my Mac.
Yeah, I've got it installed. I've had to manage some old projects that needed like PHP 5 dot something crazy, and it was like, all right, I'm just going to install Docker on this instead of trying to nuke my homebrew.
Yeah.
And yeah, this thing's sort of fragile, which is why Takeout is, why it exists.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got some news with Tailwind CSS. So Tailwind 1.7.0 was released, and it now includes built-in support for background gradients. So if you've ever, I've done this just recently. If you've ever defined your own background gradients, you've had to do like, style equals linear gradient, whatever, right? So now it includes first class support for that. So all you have to do is bg gradient to r, so like to the right, like going to the right, and then you say from, and then you can pass in a color in your color profile, so like orange -400 via red -500, which would be like the middle color, to pink -500. So you can specify up to 3 colors, I believe, or maybe it requires it. There's the syntax is in the show notes here. We'll drop it in here. But basically, it gives you a really nice linear gradient using just your utility classes there. The other thing that's really cool is you also have this new background clip utility. So what you can do is, maybe you've seen this before, where you kind of have like a piece of text, and behind that entire piece of text is a gradient. This is very like an Apple-ish looking thing. But you can do that, so you can specify this gradient that you want, and then you can say bg clip text, and then you can say the text is transparent, and then you just type in the text that you want there. The text, since it's transparent, you'll see the background gradient behind it. It'll show through. So this is just like a clipping mask that you do in Photoshop or something like that, but it looks really, really nice. The one other thing that he talked about is if you're using the grid utilities, there's these column gap and row gap utilities, which aren't terrible at all, but the way that it was named wasn't consistent with how other things are named in Tailwind. So if you've ever used the space utilities, it's like space -y and then a number, or space -x a number, and that will place an equal amount of spacing between all of the first and last child elements of a div. What he's done is he's basically left the names as they were, the gap utilities as they were, but he's also aliased them in 1.7 to be gap-x a number, and then gap-y a number. So just a little bit more consistent with the way that they were. Of course, he's so harsh on himself. He's like, they do the exact same thing, but have names that don't suck.
Yeah, for some dumb reason, I named the column gap and row gap utilities colgap-n and row gap-n respectively, which isn't terrible, but it's not consistent with how other things in Tailwind are named.
You got it. Yeah, you got it. So there's some other stuff in there as well, but those are sort of probably the most relevant ones to most of the folks here. So that's Tailwind 1.7. Okay. We've also got this Laravel Blade once component. Michael, what's that?
As of Laravel 7.25, Blade now includes a new once component that will only render the items within the tag one time. Essentially, and Eric, who wrote this post, said it's a little hard to explain and much easier to show with an example. So it's going to be even harder for us to do in audio form. But essentially, inside one of your Blade components, you could have the @once Blade directive and put something in there, for example, a script tag. Perhaps you wanted to have a bunch of components that rely on Alpine, which may appear one or more times on the page. If you put the script source attribute into the once tag, Laravel will handle making sure that it is only injected into your page one time, so that you don't end up with 10 different, link source equals whatever, or script source equals link to Alpine.js 10 times on the page. And then Mohammed provided some examples as well, where you could do some templates that are only put onto the page once per time. So essentially, the component renders itself once on the page, no matter how many times you reference its containing or the parent component. So awful explanation. If you didn't get it, we will have a link for it in the show notes. As I said, it's available as part of Laravel 7.25 and above.
No, I think it makes sense. It makes sense. We've got this other package too that we've got called presets. So what this is it's a command line tool for applying existing presets to your freshly scaffolded projects. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We already have Laravel presets, right? We
Yes,
do
we
have that.
The UI components and things like that.
Right. So I think this might just be a little bit more than that, and it allows you to define your own quite easily.
So I think it just hooks into the existing presets. It's certainly linking to the existing ones for the tool stack, Inertia, Tailwind, Pest, Vite, and Tailwind, and presets. So when you run these commands, it will leave all of the things floating around. So you have the composer dependencies still in your composer.json. You have any of the bits and pieces in your app that you don't need. So once you install the composer package and it runs its scaffolding to bring in whatever it needs to install the preset, unless you actively go into your composer.json and then remove it, it'll just be part of your application forever. So this preset is an alternative setup in that it will do the things that it needs to do to install. So it'll pull down all of your bits and pieces, it'll run the install commands, and then it'll remove them so that you don't have all that lingering in there. It's using npx, which is, I guess, the npm command to run a binary or run a utility from npm. At least that's my understanding of it. I never looked into it. I just copy and paste things whenever they relate to JavaScript and hope that npm doesn't blow up.
Yeah, so it says
it's more a wrapper around installing those presets.
And it sounds like the main motivation behind this is it says the main issue with the concept of boilerplates is that from the user's point of view, it's hard to know what changed. Right, so the features of the boilerplate have to be well documented, but even then the user doesn't know exactly what files have been edited or removed for the boilerplate in order to work. So unless it's been documented, which also is a lot of work. So as a maintainer, it can be hard to keep track of those changes that have been made to the code base, or easy to forget something in an update, and then you get dead code, kind of like what you're talking about, right? So with this, a preset describes the exact changes needed for the features to be added. So you can just read the preset's code and know the changes that it's bringing, so it solves that issue. And it also makes the maintenance easier because of the overhead caused by all the files of a boilerplate are gone. It's just a preset instead of a boilerplate. So that's it. That's all. I'm not going to pretend to understand anything more than what I can just read on the screen for that one because I don't typically use those. But there you have it. All right. We've also got these 9 quick tips for auth in Laravel.
Indeed. So this is an article by Povilis Kodop, who runs the Laravel Daily website.
Yeah.
So Laravel has a great out-of-the-box authentication system, which is about to get even better with the supplement of Jetstream. But we need to know to customize things here and there. And for some of that, you need to look to external packages and write lots of custom code, etc., etc. So by default, the auth routes, I guess, call is put into your routes file whenever you run the Laravel UI stuff. But that Laravel, that auth routes call does accept parameters. For example, you've got the ability to include login, logout, register, reset, confirm, and verify. So if you pass this array of key value pairs, so if you were to pass register and then fat arrow false, you won't have a register app in your application, which is useful if you are only inviting users to your application, or you're only creating users through a backend administration panel or via Nova or something like that. So you can just disable the register endpoint completely, and then it just won't get registered in your application. So that'll just enable and disable the routes. We've got Laravel UI to generate controllers only. So if you were to say PHP Artisan UI controllers, it will just install the controllers. It won't install any of the views or anything like that, and you can build your own with whatever front-end tooling you want to use, whether you want to use Bootstrap or you want to use Tailwind or you want to use something else. You can do that. You've got the ability to reconfirm password for important settings. So since Laravel 6.2, this has been a feature in the framework where you wrap a route in the password.confirm middleware, and then it will essentially redirect the user to a password confirmation to make sure that they're actually authorized to make that change. You've got the ability to log out for other devices, the ability to redirect after login and register with custom logic, how to create new users using Tinker. What else we got here? Login with email or username, so you can provide a public function username method on your authenticate user or your authenticatable model. In most cases, it's going to be user. And if you return the string of a column, you can authenticate with some other method. So you could use email, or you could use username, or you could use a field called, I don't know, flibbity flu, if that was what you wanted to do. So that's a handy thing if you've got something, if you've got a legacy application that you're porting across that doesn't use the username field, or the email field rather. I know that in our legacy CRM, we have a field called username with a capital U and a capital N for some obscure reason. So we had to do that modification ourselves. You've got the ability to customize parameters for the throttles logins trait, disable auto login when registering. So if you register a user, typically it will log them in straight away and then redirect them to the dashboard or the homepage, whatever you have configured. So you can disable that. And there's additional checks with email and password. So you can do credential checks if you need to check that the username and password is correct, but also that they have a has active subscription or something like that. You can pop that into the credentials method of your login controller. So that's a high-level overview of what's in the post. Obviously, if you want more detail and some code samples and more examples, then definitely check out the link, which we will have in the show notes.
All right, folks, and that's all we've got today. It was a crazy week this last week. Lots of great, cool stuff going on in the world of Laravel. Great time to be a Laravel developer. So awesome. We're super happy to be able to bring you the news. Yeah.
It's always good around Laracon time because there's a whole lot of energy, a whole lot of buzz around new features and new functions and lots of things to learn and lots of things that people are sharing through talks and the discussion that goes on around that. And it always gives me a renewed energy to pick some stuff up and to do some stuff. And doing a project at work at the moment that is using Livewire and Alpine. I'm very excited by some of the changes that are coming in both of those projects, and also the stuff that's coming in Laravel 8. I'm looking forward to that. We will probably do our standard reserved approach to moving to Laravel 8. We'll let other people be the beta testers on that. But it is always cool and exciting to see new functionality and new tooling. And Taylor's all about that developer experience and that low threshold to pain. So it doesn't always come first, but when it's like Apple, they're not always first to market, but they're typically always. The approach is correct when they're ready to bring that to market.
Yep, I totally agree. Yeah, we'll probably wait a couple weeks. And let all those dot point releases get out there. 8.0.1, 8.0.2, 8.0.3, 8.0.4, 8.0.12, and then we'll push in. We'll jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, this was episode 126. If you liked the show, we would really appreciate it if you jump on your podcatcher of choice, give us a 5-star review, or just retweet us, share this with your friends. That would be amazing. Show notes for this episode can be found at podcast.laravel-news.com/126. And of course, if you'd like to have something featured on the show, or just give us a shout out, talk to us on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at Laravel News. And I will say, I had one person take me up on the whole talk to us and we'll talk about your blog post.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't submit the blog post.
Ah.
So it's like, hey, let me know when you submit your post and I would be happy to talk about it on the air. So we still have that is still out there, folks. Talk to us and we would love to give your stuff a shout out on the show. Just like hearing from you.
There we go.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you.
See ya.